This is the lesson for Chapter 3, Section 4, and it's Part 1. So what we are doing is operating in scientific notation. And so we are adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. So let's see how it's done. So when we are adding in scientific notation, the key is we have to have the same exponent on the 10. And so we have to have the same power of 10. Since these are not the same, I can't add them together. So what I need to do is modify one of them to make them the same power. And what I like to do is I go with the one that is smallest. So the one that's smallest, I try to make this a power of 7. And so in order to make it a power of 7, what I need to do is move that decimal. That decimal point needs to move over 1, 2, 3 spaces. And the reason is that if I move it over 3 spaces, it'll end up increasing this 4 to a 7 because 4 plus 3 makes 7. So I have got a couple of zeros I need to add in here. So I've got some placeholders, 0 here and a 0 here. So the decimal point's going to go right there. So it's going to be 0.00362. So basically all I do is I look at the number, and if I need to make the 4 a bigger number, I'm going to have to make this one a smaller number to keep it in balance. And if I was to make, let's say, this one a smaller number, then I need to make the 4.8 a bigger number if I wanted to do that. So the way I ended up thinking about it is, okay, 3 plus 4 makes the 7, so I need to move it over 1 space to get the decimal point on the other side of the 3, and then I have 2 more spaces, so that means 2 more zeros. So now I can add on that 4.8 times 10 to the 7th. And so the way you do that is you just add on the 4.8 to the 3 or 0.00362. So the reason we can do that is because they have the same factor. They have the same power of 10. So basically what you're doing is using the distributive property. And we're distributing out that 10 to the 7th. We're factoring that out. And I'm going to add these two numbers, 4.8 plus the 0.00362. And so the key is to line up decimals as you add. And so I have to line up those decimals. And notice that the number is just going to get a little bit bigger when I add in those numbers. So that's going to be 4.80362. And so that answer is going to be 4.80362. Oops, forgot that 2 there, so let me get that in there. It's 362 times 10 to the 7th power. And there's our answer. So moving on to the next problem, and this one, we're going to go to the one that is smallest, the 7, and we're going to try to make it a 12. So what that means is I need to move the decimal 5 spaces over because 7 plus 5 is what makes 12. So I need to move that decimal 5 spaces. So 1 space and then 4 more spaces. So that's going to be 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically I'm going to write that as 0.0000682 times 10 to the 7th power. And then now I can add on the 8.962 times 10 to the 12th. And so again, when I do that, I am just factoring out that 10 to the 12th power. And then I'm adding up the 8.962, and then plus the 0.0000682. And from there, we can go ahead and add those numbers together. And so when I do that, I end up with an 8.962, and then the 0, and then I have the 682. And then this is times by 10 to the 12th power. And you see, the nice thing about changing the smaller decimal or smaller number so it has the same power as the larger one is nice, because then you don't have to change anything back. You're going to end up having a number that, in this case, didn't need to change. Sometimes you will end up having to change them depending on how close the powers are to each other. So let's take a look at the next one. Same sort of thing. We need to make the powers the same so we can combine them. So I'm going to move this decimal over 1, 2, 3 spaces. So 1 space and then 2 more to make this a 6. So now I've got this. I'm going to write a little bit differently this time. 2.4 times 10 to the 6th, and then over here I've got actually I'm going to line up the decimals, 0.00681 times 10 to the 6th power. You see, I write it this way so that I can go ahead and add them up directly, so it'll save me a little bit of time. So actually I'm not adding any more, so let's go ahead and change that real quick. So it's subtraction, so I need to subtract. So that means I need to borrow. So I really need to move this over just a bit. This times 10 to the 6th. And the reason I'm moving that over is so that way you can end up seeing the borrowing that ends up going on. So I have to add in these extra zeros, and I have to borrow. And I have to borrow all the way back from this 4 and change it to a 3. And then these numbers change to 9s. And so they all change to 9s except that last one. That last one's not. And so I should have 3 9s there. And so when I go ahead and do the subtraction, I end up with a 2.39319. And this is times 10 to the 6th power. So that is our answer there. So same sort of thing on this one, just need to move this decimal 6 spaces, so 1 and then 5 zeros. So it's going to be 3.8, and I'm going to leave this one way over here, times 10 to the 16th. And then this one's going to become 0 point, and then I got 5 zeros, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 9, and then the 2. So I have to add in all these extra zeros here, and then do the subtraction. So you notice how much you have to end up borrowing all the way back from to the 8. Change that to a 7, and these all these numbers get changed to 9s except the last one. And so now we can go ahead and do the subtraction. So our answer is going to end up being 3.79, and then we got 4 9s there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I got all 4 of them, and then the 0, 8. And then this is all times 10 to the 16th power. So that's subtraction, and again, subtraction and addition, same sort of thing. You're going to end up having to change the exponents so that they're the same. That means moving the exponent back a number of spaces until they become the same number. Move the exponent on the decimal on the number that's smaller back. So with multiplication, it's a little bit easier. We just take the 1.9 and you multiply that by the 2.81. And then you bring the 10 to the 5th and the 10 to the 6th together. And so notice that everything's being multiplied. So I'm multiplying these two numbers, and that ends up giving me 5.339. And once I do that, then I can go ahead and combine the exponents. So here's an exponent rule. See how the 10 to the 5th and 10 to the 6th are being multiplied, so we can just add up those exponents. And that's our answer. So same thing on this one. 5.09 times by 1.21, and then you go ahead and bring in all those 10s. So you got the 10 to the 33rd times by the 10 to the 18th. So you're just multiplying these two numbers. That number's going to be just around 6, a little bit bigger though. So 6.1589 is what you get when you multiply that. And then you add up the exponents you have. You got 33 10s and 18 10s make 51 10s altogether. Well, just to show you one other problem that's a little bit different than the ones I have there, I'm going to do this one. And it's one in which we have to, we end up with a bigger number for the first value, bigger than 10. So let's see how that's done. So it's a 4 times 10 to the 8th, maybe times by, let's go with a 4 times 10 to the 9th. And so when I multiply the 4 and the 4, I end up getting 16. 16, and then I count up how many 10s I have. So I got 8 and 9 make 17 10s. But you see, that's not in scientific notation. So what we need to do is I need to move the decimal back one space this way. And if I do that, that's like doing this. That's like saying, well, that's like taking a 10 times by 10 to the first power. So basically, if I'm dividing by 10, the 16 by 10, so in order to keep it the same, I need to multiply it by 10. So I'm adding in a 10 to the first. Well, I already have a 10 to the 17th, so I need to combine these. And so that leaves me with 1.6 times 10 to the 18th. So the way I think about it is this. I think about if I need to move the decimal back one space to make it smaller, that's dividing it by 10. That means I need to multiply this number by 10 to make it the same. So let's take a look at division. Division, you're going to do the same as multiplication, except instead of multiplying, we're dividing the 1.6 into 6.4. So again, decimals go over. 16 goes into 64 4 times. And then with division, we subtract these exponents. So it's going to be 4 times 10 to the 14th minus 5. So we subtract the exponents there. And I'm left with 4 times 10 to the 9th power. Well, how about on this one here? We've got a 2 into 2.18. Well, 2 goes into 2 one time, and then we have 0.9. And so again, we're taking that 1.09 and I'm multiplying it by this difference of those exponents, 19 minus 5. So that gives me 1.09 times by 10 to the 14th power. But let's say we had something a little bit different. Let's say we had a problem in which we have to deal with moving the decimal point over. So let's say it was about a 1.22 times by 10 to the 4th power over maybe just a 2 times by 10 to the 6th power, something like this. So when I do the division, 2 goes into 1.22, so that goes in there 0, that makes a 6 and a 1. So I've got 0.61 times by 10. Now notice here I have to subtract, I get negative 2. So it's not in scientific notation yet, so I need to move that decimal over one space this way. That's increasing this, that's moving this up by 10. So if I'm to do that, to keep the number the same, I'm going to have to make this one smaller. Just like over here, I had to make this one bigger. This one I had to make smaller, so I had to make this one bigger. So same thing here. If I have to make this one bigger, I've multiplied it by 10. That means I need to divide this by 10. So that means this one's going to end up being times by 10 to the negative third. So negative 2 minus 1 makes negative 3. And so that would be my answer. So those are types of problems that you're going to see on tonight's homework.